What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today's conversation is with Calvin Correli. Calvin is an entrepreneur and CEO of the software company Simplero. He came from Denmark in 1999 and now owns and operates and is part of a handful of companies or so. We have a wide-ranging conversation. We actually start off by talking about music and how music has such an emotional connection to human beings in our lives. We also talk plenty about business. We talk about how to be able to make a connection between how you're reacting today and how it's potentially your inner child that is doing the reacting, and how you can start to recognize that. We talk about how to bring better energy to your work and to your life, and so much more. Make sure you get your pen and paper as usual so that you can take notes. Enjoy this conversation with Calvin Correli. Calvin, good to see you, brother. Doing well today?
Good to be here, man. Yeah, doing great today.
Very nice. You know, the other thing I just recognized in your background was that Les Paul.
Yeah.
Are you a guitar player, or are you just is that something that's signed? What's with the
I
guitar?
I'm a guitar fumbler arounder. I
Ah,
had yeah. So
that's
my
funny.
my first instrument was the accordion, and then I went from that to the piano, which is still my main instrument. And then I started picking up vocals, started singing and songwriting, producing, and I played a little bit of guitar, like some chords, but yeah, it's like I guess it's almost 10 years ago now. That's when I got into singing, and that led me to the songwriting, the music production, and then like learning to play guitar more. So I was practicing quite a bit for a while, but then I don't know, I got other things to do. So
That
I'm not a good
happens with
guitar
the
player. But I saw that, yeah, I found that on eBay. So I really wanted that. And it's almost as old as me. It's from I think from 79 or something. And yeah, in good condition.
they're beautiful guitars. They play very well. I don't have one, but I've played one. They're great guitars. So
Yeah,
that is on my list most definitely. So
nice.
um,
Well, come play mine sometime.
I definitely will. I'll stop by.
Yeah.
But no, that's the way of instruments, I think, for a lot of people. You know, you kind of start them and stop them and start them and stop them. I've
Yeah.
played guitar since I was in sixth grade, and it's kind of the same thing. I'll play real good for 6 months, and then I'll fall off for
Yeah.
a year, 2 years,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. So
I'm really excited because my vision for a long time has been to integrate the music into my personal brand online and what I do there. Like my bigger mission is to be a spiritual teacher, a healer, if you will, to people at scale. And I feel like music is such a powerful way to reach people. You can connect to the heart more easily through music than just speaking. And so I'm so pumped because I just hired a kind of videographer, personal brand manager, if you will. He's starting on Monday, and he is also doing music. He writes and raps and produces, and he has got an incredible sense of humor. So I'm excited to be doing some fun stuff with him.
that's cool. That'll be a cool integration. Yeah, music
Yeah,
is it's been around for so long. It's been part of our history forever as human beings, just been
for
part of us
real.
for
Yeah,
so long. But
yeah,
you're 100% right about being able to deliver a message through it, being able to, you know, whenever we think about it's funny, like you can be driving down and listening to the radio, and all of a sudden this song comes on, and you just have this huge sense of nostalgia that can just take you over, right?
yeah,
Because the
yeah.
song is from your high school prom, or it's from your first kiss, or it's from whatever, like whatever
Mhm,
thing, and you
mhm.
remember those things from that song. So it is
Yeah,
pretty amazing what music
yeah.
will actually do.
Well, and 12 years ago, I moved to India and lived there for a while, for a year. And while we were there, I got into that was before I started singing just for myself. I would never sing in public back then. That was only later. I had this thing in my head that my voice is so ugly, is like raping people's ears. That was how I perceived my own voice. Right. And I can't carry a tune. Like I'll sing off key. And then in 2014, I went to Burning Man, And there's an experience there where I was deep playa, and there's this like LED lights in the ceiling of some tent in deep playa, and it responded to sound. And then there's one guy starts singing a cappella, top to bottom, like "What would I do without your smart mouth?" You know that song. And I was so fucking jealous. I wanted to strangle him. And then that was my inspiration to look. Actually, I want to start pursuing this. I found a vocal teacher, and told her as much about like I don't have a terrible voice and I can't like sing off key and all stuff. And she was like, after I'd start singing, she's like she went on this 10-minute rant, and I had recorded it about like I've never met anyone who had such it was a gap between what they thought of themselves and the reality is so massive as here. And you've got an awesome, amazing voice, and you've like your key pitch is great. There's a few things that we got to fix, but there's like complete crazy wake up call for me. And so that's what really launched me into that. And she was like, you can learn to produce, you can learn to write songs, like all this thing. I'm like, whoa, shit, me? I had
Yeah,
no idea.
yeah. Back off,
But
girl. Back up. Hold on.
yeah, right.
I
But
didn't believe I could
2012,
sing when
so
I walked in.
a couple of years before that, in 2012, I had started singing so just for me. And I would launch into the song. I was really like some old Billy Joel songs, for example, really spoke to me, and I'd sing, and then I'd get to a certain point in the song, and then I just start bawling, like just crying my eyes out. And I couldn't stand, like I was just, like had to sit down and just like cry and cry, and then I get back up, start from the top again, start singing, reach that same place, break down crying. I did it again and again, and maybe like 10, 12 times in, like it didn't have that intensity anymore. And that was, kind of a process of just like at that point I was still pretty new to accessing my feelings, and being able to feel it and like cry was something that was like prior to 2007 I didn't cry for like 20 years or something. So yeah, it really to include me into the power of music, and that the power of emotions in music, right? There's something when we sing where we just access a deeper layer that we don't get normally.
Hmm, that's good. I wonder if it has something to do with like letting down your guard, because so many people, I would say, maybe feel the same way that you do about their voice, not only singing voice, but also their own voice. When you play
Mm-hmm.
back someone's voice to them, they go, "Oh, I don't want to hear that," right? They plug their ears or walk away or whatever. And their singing voice, especially, people will sing in the shower, do whatever, but you ask them to sing in public, forget about it. So I wonder if the people who are comfortable in their singing and being open, like that's confidence coming out in them. And most people don't show confidence in so many ways in their life. So I wonder if there's like some sort of emotional connection there. I wonder if there's some sort of connection to like yourself and you're actually letting yourself go while you're singing. And that's
Mm-hmm.
like the emotional connection. Whereas so many people struggle with letting themselves go in life, like believing that they can start a business and grow a business, or believing that they can get themselves in better shape. I wonder if having that like freedom to just sing and being confident in your singing, I wonder if that's, I'm just thinking out loud, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if that is, because when I think of somebody who sings, they look confident,
Mm-hmm.
they're, who sings well, especially, they look very
Yeah.
confident in what they're doing. They look very drawn to what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people just miss that confidence and that feeling in their normal life. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
spitballing a little bit.
Might be, yeah. For me, the way I feel is like that I have this sense that I can hear things in people's voice. I can hear patterns of holding, patterns of hiding, patterns of wounding in people's voices. I can't say specifically like that happened at this point, blah blah blah, right? But I can hear the theme of it in the sound of someone's voice. And I think that's how we like our emotions, our inner state, our unconscious mind shapes the voice, how sound is made with our voice. And so in this way, in order to make certain sounds and it's combined with the words, like we have to go to a like it is like a direct line to some emotional spot inside of us that you can't control, right? It's just like a right in there. And so for me, that's what happens is like you just like that place, and there's just happens to be a lot of hurt right there, a lot of pain, a lot of grief or anger or whatever it is, and that's what comes out. And the first time I did a this has been in, I don't know, 20 something years ago, but I did I was at a workshop with a lady named Debbie Ford, who's passed away now, but they did like an anger release thing exercise where they would hype you up and get you to this like dynamic breathing thing, and then like think of all, like we're blindfolded in a chair. Think of all the people who have hurt you and betrayed you and let you down and da da da. Like they went on and on for like 10 minutes, and then like you weren't allowed to make a sound other than your breathing, and then like now go, and then everybody just unleashed. And for me it was like I had no idea that that was in there, like so much anger, right? And anger is all about boundary violation or a threshold. People are feeling violated. That's what gives rise to anger. And so all of that just came out, and afterwards my voice was different, like it was changed. And I found that too with I do a lot of a body therapy thing called from Denmark called body SDS, where they work through the body. The first time I did this, it was in 2007, and they like work the front side, and then they go into the belly area, which they call the emotional switchboard. And then I just started crying. That was the first time I cried as an adult, crying. And he left me, like left the room, left me alone. I just bawled and cried for 20 minutes, and then laughing and then crying and then laugh, like no story, no content. But what I've noticed is like in the past few years where I haven't been like practicing my singing voice or any of those things, but my voice has really matured to the point where I sound much better now than I did 10 years ago, even though I haven't been practiced, but because I've been living my life and I've been maturing and I've been doing all this emotional release work inside. So that's how I see it.
Mm, that's a good way to break it down. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that expansion. It's
Yeah.
interesting that we're sitting here talking about music because that's not where I expected us to go. But we certainly,
No.
but no, I'm glad we did. I'm glad you brought up Denmark because that's where you're originally from,
Mhm.
and where I wanted to start, which is now we're kind of in the middle of it at this point, was your transition from Denmark to New York. 1999, I believe, is when you made the
Yep.
move from Denmark to New York. So I'm curious what started that transition. What inspired you to make the jump from your homeland to come here?
As a kid, I got into computers very early. Both my parents were programmers, and I'm like I just turned 50, so that gives you an indication. They started in computers in the 70s, which was super
Super
early.
early. Yeah.
And both of them, like my mom including, both of them were programmers, right? That's kind of what you were back then. Like it wasn't like an iPad and like or an iPhone where you just download software from the app store. It's not how that worked. It was literally punch cards, and there's
Yeah.
5 computers in the entire country. So so I was born into that world, and then and I really took a liking to computers and programming. My brother not so much, but I just like went all in on that. My brother was more social, and he would play computer games later on when that was, was happening with his friends. I would just sit alone at the computer, isolated, and play and programming, writing software. And and then my dad had business in the US, and he would travel to the US regularly. And I gave him specific pointers for books I wanted him to buy that I'd heard about from other people, from I think mainly from the programmers in my mom's software company. So my mom started a software company in 1980. And at that point, we didn't have the internet, right? We didn't have like I got on CompuServe at some point, which was like a bulletin board system. There were some BBSs and bulletin board systems and things like that, but there wasn't like an internet.
Mhm.
So to get information was mainly books. And there's one bookstore in the entire country of Denmark that had English language computer books, but that was it. And so and they had a very limited selection, and it was, usually pretty dated. So I asked my dad to buy books home from the US. And so through all of that, I managed to pick up on a lot of English language before I learned in school, and I got really oriented towards the US. And so later on, when I studied computer science at a university in Denmark, and all my friends would go to study a year abroad somewhere in the EU, I wanted to study a year abroad as well, along with my girlfriend. And for me, it was no question that it had to be the US, right? You don't go to Germany to learn about computers and software and programming. Like the US is the country where that happens, and especially at that time. And so, and then once I did that, once I decided to go to the US, I started applying to some universities, and I realized, holy crap, like it's kind of hard to get in when you're not from here and you haven't, gone up through the system in high school and stuff here. But second, it's fucking expensive. They wanted like $30,000 tuition for a year. And I'm like, wait. And that's when I realized there's this .com boom going on, and I could actually make six figures instead of paying, tons of money in tuition. And I did. So I was able to get a job. I try to get a job. Like I visit it and try to figure out how to get a job via the internet, but didn't succeed. So then I went to visit for a week and did some interviews, and basically I was like really confused about what I wanted to be. And so that was what I tried, like
right.
design jobs and these other things. And then like there's this one speaker, there's a guy named Philip Greenspun. He had a website called photo.net, which was all about photography, which I was really into. And he also had written a book about, like, it was called Philip and Alex's Guide to Web Programming, like how to build database backed websites, which was like a big deal in the late 90s. And he was doing a lecture at NYU, which I went to and spoke with him. And that's when I was like, oh, maybe I could work. I didn't think I was qualified to work for him. I didn't realize how good I was. And so he was like, no, like do the problem set from my MIT course he was teaching at MIT, and then submit that. And then like we can get you a visa, we can sponsor a visa, we can get you a job. So I did that, and it turned out I was like one of the very best people there. And I had no idea. I had the same thing with the singing. I didn't know how good I was. I thought I was like kind of miserable, like lousy at programming, and like at the bottom of the barrel. And it turned out I was like one of the best. So I was like, oh, okay. So immediately got a job, and yeah, learned so much more in just the first couple of weeks on the job there than I had of useful stuff than I had learned at whatever it was, three years at university at that point.
Mm. So I'm curious if you had no idea why you were, or that you were so good. Is it because you weren't surrounded, like you weren't applying it enough? You just weren't surrounded by the right people. You weren't applying it enough. What do you think that was?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't surrounded by I no, I think it's a couple things. Um, I was working very much in isolation. So on the things, and my dad would praise me and my mom would praise me, and that was great. But it wasn't, computer science is a very different beast than actual like software engineering, writing software that people need to use. And that was one of the distinctions that Phil Greenspan made. But I had this thing in my head that in America, everybody's so much better than me. So I think there's that thing going on. Like, and I think that's a very common thing. I've noticed in Denmark, maybe it's just my psychology, but I think I've noticed it with other people, because Denmark is a very small country, 5 million people, I think maybe 6 million now, but it's like, either it's like, we're the best, it's just nobody understands us, right? Or like everybody else is so much better. It's yeah. And then every once in a while you have people like Rene Redzepi at Noma and like things like that are like truly world class, and that's amazing.
So you got here, you figured it out. You eventually figured out that you were better than what you thought you were.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 25 years later, so you were 25 when you moved here, if I'm doing my math
Yeah.
correctly. If you're 50 now,
Yeah.
that was 25 years ago. You're 25 when you moved here. 25 years later, you have done the American dream, if you will, right?
Yeah.
That's why most people moved here, for the American dream, to be able to do what you want, build something, and make something of your life, if you will. So you
Mhm.
have Simplero. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes. Rhymes
Uh,
with dinero.
Dinero, there you go. Simplero is online software company, primarily for, I'd say, coaches and e-learning. You also have a couple of health-based companies, one in, I believe, supplements of some sort. Maybe it's just one supplement. And then one that is maybe movement of some sort. I forget what it is. Simplero Health.
Yeah.
So how did that evolution start to happen then? How did you go from, oh, I'm just a guy who's figuring out that I'm good at this computer thing, to, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, to now I'm an entrepreneur and I'm getting into these other fields as well?
Yeah. The the journey was, I mean, so I started Simplero because I was and by the way, let me just say this. This is what I wanted to start with is, for me, America wasn't about the American dream for me. Moving to America for me was about a strong connection with the energy of this place, of the country. Like, there's
Interesting.
even like the land. Like, I feel a different energy in my body when I'm here than I do when I'm in Copenhagen. I feel more at home here. And I don't know what that is, past life stuff or whatever, but there's some like deep attraction to the culture, the land, um, the people, that just makes me feel more at home here, even the language. Um, and and then I happen to, love doing what I do and make software and coaching and those things. But that wasn't what drew me here. It wasn't like, oh, I can be more successful here. It's just I can feel more at home here. And
Interesting.
yeah. And Simplera started because I went through, like, I ended up, it was supposed to be a year here. We ended up being for 2.5, and then 9/11 happened. And then we moved back to Denmark after that. And while I was there is when I started building the software company. That's when I started on my personal growth journey, my spiritual growth, which I was very much resisting. I had this idea that if you need a coach or a therapist or any of that stuff, it means you've already failed and you might as well go die. Like, there's no, like,
Yeah.
that was my mindset.
Mm,
So when I finally admitted that, all right, I'm something's going on, I need some help, that was like, all right, cool. Like, I've given up on on that old version of me. It was literally like, you have to be incredibly successful by the age of 30, like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs level success by the age of 30, or you might as well go kill yourself, which is a weird mindset to have. But these things are all unconscious, right? Like, because there's obviously tons of people who are alive and happy that don't have that. But yeah, so that personal growth journey led me to a moment of realizing, oh crap, I'm here to integrate spirituality and entrepreneurship. That's really what I feel like my purpose is. And that's what led to building Simplero and to doing the coaching. So those two go really hand in hand. And then later, I started to open up to my masculine side. So I was a very feminine guy that had, like, unconsciously decided at some like young age I didn't want to be like my dad, because I felt like he was like hurtful, like he would, hurt me. And so I don't want to be like that because that's bad. So I want to be more like my mom. And then this was in 2017 is when I realized, oh, I need to actually build that masculine side of me. And so part of that was the health stuff, was starting to work out. And that led to a whole cascading series of things. The other big part of that was to really heal that and reparent that inner boy that was really hurting, and wounded. Um, but the physical side, I had a mentor who helped me see all of this. And before this, if I worked out 3 hours a week, I felt like I was really doing great. And I had this thing where I didn't want to work out. I wish I didn't have to. And if only I could just like be this, like, yeah, this body is just there to carry my brain around. Like if I
Yeah.
didn't need that, it would be so much better. So does embody. But he helped me shatter my beliefs around that. And he said, look, if you really want the body that you say that you do, you're going to have to work out 8 hours a week. And I was like, dude, you got to be shitting me. Like 8 hours, that's insane. But I'm up for a good challenge. So I took it on and I started to work out. What I did was I track it. I'm a nerd. So I track it in a spreadsheet by the minute. And then I had this rule that if I got behind, I had to catch up the next week. Or if I knew I was going to be traveling, I could work ahead
Mm.
and that just keep, putting in the bank. But 8 hours a week, no exceptions for being sick or traveling or anything, just 8 hours a week, get it the fuck done. And I did. I kept that going for like a year and a half consistently. And then I like 2 months in, I didn't really need it because like then I was hooked. But that was a big deal for me. And the other part of that was I had a couple of other rules, which was make it fun. It can be anything that gets my pulse going and sweating. It can be bicycling to a meeting instead of taking the subway or car or something. It could be swimming, it could be puffy, which is one of the workouts that I do, and or whatever it is. And the other is make it fun and take my little boy by the hand. No trainer, no one that I can project my authority issues onto and say, oh, you make me do this, because I would
Mm.
do that so all the time.
Mhm.
And just, yeah, like I'm not, there's no one doing this to me. I'm not doing it to my little boy who feels like my dad would make me do stuff. We're doing it together, you know. And yeah, it was groundbreaking. And so that's why I got into that health stuff. It all comes down to this genius guy in Copenhagen. His name is Andrew, who's the founder of a body therapy system called the Body SDS that I mentioned before.
Mhm.
And he's the one that created the workouts. He's the one that created the supplements. And I want to bring that to the US because it's incredible. I actually have one of the top therapists, body SDS therapists, who's in New York right now, and we're working together. He's staying in my building and like working with clients here in New York through my network and my friends and whatnot. And it's just people try it and they're like they can't um they can't, it's like so hard to explain what it is. It's like you're on a massage table, but it's not really a massage. It's not like Reiki. It's not really like anything else that exists, but it's so powerful. And once people try it, they want to share it. And that's that's where I'm at. It's completely changed my life. Like, so that's the whole Simplero Health is kind of that. My whole approach is the only thing that can heal the body is the human body, and you just need to give it the right conditions to heal itself, right? You're not going to get healing from a pill or from anything else. It's you healing yourself, but we got to get the conditions right. And we don't need anything. We don't need drugs, we don't need pharma, we don't need any of those things to heal. We just need to get right inside.
I love the get the conditions right, and it's
Mm-hmm.
so true. Internal conditions and I would say external conditions or external environment. The
Yeah.
environment is your external environment, especially, is something that people so easily overlook when it comes to making change in your life because
Mm-hmm.
habits are based on the context that they're in. And so many people's eating habits, for instance, are based on their context of being at home sitting on the couch. You get
Yep.
at home, you sit on the couch. What do? You get bored, which you
Mm-hmm.
which you think is a signal for hunger, and you go and you start grabbing some food and grabbing some snacks.
Yep.
So simply changing the environment, your external environment, is another simple strategy. But I want to go back to, you keep bringing the little boy inside of you up, which I think is very interesting, because my belief is that we have, and I think that you'll say the same thing or something similar, is that we all have versions of ourself growing up inside of us. We all have the 5-year-old us, we have the 15-year-old us, we have the 25-year-old us, those stages of life, if you will, still inside of us. And whenever someone bumps up against that, or whenever a circumstance bumps up against it, that will come out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so doing the work to figure out what that is and figure out that it's there, number one, and then what it is and what you can start to do to work with it instead of try and push it down, because so many of us just try and like sink it below. I was one for a long time, and it sounds like you
Mhm.
were too, one who
Yeah.
just tried to push it and just jam it down,
Yeah.
um, so we could ignore it.
Mhm. And that's where food comes in as well, right? Food and
It
alcohol and
does.
weed and all those things. Yeah. Where
Oh,
you
it
drive
definitely
them.
does. That's a good point. So I'm curious how you started to, and you kind of hit on it a little bit a couple times here and there. How'd you start to go through that journey of figuring out that you need to work with the little boy inside of you, or the young one, the young version of yourself inside of you, instead of work against them?
Mhm. Once I got, so the moment that really kind of started to knock that boulder over for me was a an advisory board meeting that I did in 2003, and I did invited some smart folks to help advise me on the business. And then afterwards, one of them looked me dead in the eyes and he said, "Look, we've been here for 3 hours. I still don't know what you want." And it was like, it was one of those like, it's such a simple, obvious question, but I was like, I didn't know that I was allowed to want anything in business other than like build a big business, right?
Right.
And and um and then like I don't know what I want. Like I have no idea. And that was what it kicked off like, oh shit, like why is that? Well, because I can't really feel anything. Why is that? Well, because like all of this, like it was like it felt like I had this like tangled yarn inside of me. Like it's like all these tangled up emotions. So that was the moment where I just like, all right, I'm gonna throw in the towel. I'm gonna get a therapist, and that was crazy, like uh, uh, challenging for me. I was like so scared of that. I you know, asked some people for a recommendation, got someone, and then started working with a therapist. I think I did like 5 sessions. That wasn't my favorite modality, but that kind of opened the door for me. And then coach and whatnot. And then I found this spiritual teacher who was super helpful for me. And it was all about just like what are the bodily sensation? What are you actually feeling right now? Like, but not like labeling it, but noticing what is the sensation in the body. And then he taught me one of my favorite strategies still today, which is I call it time travel, which is like what when you're in state and you're feeling whatever that sensation is, what is the earliest memory that comes up where you felt the same thing? Because the way it seems to work to me, for me, is that we we have some we felt something then that we weren't able to process and we didn't get the help around processing at the time. And that gets stuck in our system in some way. And now we'll keep bumping into situations that trigger that same feeling until we decide to actually go back and revisit with that young version of us and get him the help that he needs today. And so time travel is like you picture that situation, you put yourself as today into that situation, freeze time, and then give him or her, like, but that young version of you, give them the support that they need to go through that experience without being stuck in the emotion. Yeah. So you hold them, you talk to them, you do like whatever you need to do to make them feel okay after, and feel the feeling, because the whole point of feelings is feel it, and then it's gone in like 60 seconds, 90 seconds, right? Um, so yeah, he was the one that really taught me that, and I've been using that over and over again. And then the body SDS is incredible because it can go in through the body to actually release that. Right? So the belly, again, they call the emotional switchboard. So they go in there, and then like, I mean, then like all the all the stuff comes out, and there's other things that are stuck. Like control is like calves and bladder and things like that. And so like what was that fear that you had? What was that pain that you had that got you to start trying to control things? That's been a pattern for me for many, many years, is like control. I have massive calf muscles because I'm so good at controlling. And they're getting soft now. There's still some knots in there that are really deep. Like my body SDS therapist here yesterday morning went super deep on some of that. And I was like, ugh. And he goes and it's first you scream, you're like, ah, and then you're like, okay, it's like it's not going away. It's like surrendering and like crying and just like it's a beautiful experience. It's painful, but it's so beautiful. And I love how there's no content or story. It's not like I remember what the situation is or anything. Like nobody, it doesn't matter. It's
Hmm.
just like let's release the pain.
Mm. Uh, so I can relate to the time travel idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example in my own life. I'm recently divorced. I got divorced last year. We were married for 10 years. And one of the things that I struggled with was this wasn't the reason we got divorced, but I'd say it maybe played a part in it. She was direct in the way that she wanted me to do things. She had, of course, certain expectations of how she wanted me to do things, and she would speak at me on how to do them. And my way of responding to that or reacting, if you will, is by shutting down and not listening. I got that from my dad when I was in my teenage years. My dad was the same way. He would tell me what he expected of me,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very intense about it and very purposeful about it. And my reaction to that was to shut down, just stand there and listen. Not, I'm once the conversation was over, they can go away. I'm still going to do what I'm going to do. But my reaction to that was that. So it didn't, it took me actually until we started going through the divorce to start to look at that and pay attention to it more directly. And it's been interesting going through that because, like you said, when it happens, what I would do is walk away and I talk to myself and I basically tell myself, you know, okay, here's what you did, here's what happened, here's what you felt. It's okay that you felt that, and kind of like walk through the situation and the scenario. Um, Cuddle the child, I guess, if you will, to be able to understand why I'm still reacting that way. So I see that exactly what you're talking about, how that can be helpful, how you can go back and be able to see the things that you're doing today, the reactions that you're having today to certain situations, whenever you reflect back on previous parts of your life and previous times in your life, why you would do that then, and then trying to figure out how you can help yourself work through it today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to me, it's like life is going to keep putting us back into that state until we're willing to do the work to heal it.
Hmm,
Yeah. Because it's
most
just
definitely.
showing us like, oh, here's an area where you're not free.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So you put a post out the other day. Let's switch gears a little bit. I think it was just yesterday, actually, which I'm curious to see what you meant by it. I have a theory on what you meant by it, but we'll see if I'm right. People don't buy based on utility; they buy based on identity.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you explain what you meant by it, and then I'll see if it matches my theory on it.
Well, if you don't mind, let's do the other way. What do you think? How do you interpret it?
So the way that I look at it is that how they identify how they identify with the brand, with the thing, the brand that's selling it to them. If they can identify with it and they make a connection to it, then it's more likely that they'll buy it, whether or not it
Yeah.
has utility to them or not. Now,
Right.
I'm assuming it has some level of utility to them if they're going to
Mm-hmm.
buy it, but my assumption is it has something to do with if they identify with the brand, if they identify with what the brand is selling them, I guess.
Yeah. 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 I think there's like, that's exactly right. There's another angle to it as well, but that's exactly right. That's what I had in mind. So like there is are you a Starbucks kind of person or a Pete's Coffee or Think Coffee? Are you like a mom and pop coffee shop
Mom
kind
and
of
pop.
person or a
Yep.
Starbucks, right? Like there's like a like you where you shop, you kind of include that in your identity, and so you're going to pick based on that. So it's not like for most people, it's not that they've done a side by side comparison between a Starbucks coffee or a Dunkin' Donuts coffee. It's more like, yeah, I'm more of a like, boutique coffee shop kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like,
Hmm.
or like some people drive a Prius because they want to be seen as someone who's like concerned about the environment or whatever. They drive a Tesla because they like Elon Musk, or they don't drive a Tesla because they fucking hate Elon Musk or whatever it is, right? So it becomes like, what kind of person do you want to be? I'm a this kind of person, like this brand. I'm a Nike person, or I'm an On person, right? Like, you know, that's what people buy based on that, much more than we normally think. And the way that that also extends to smaller brands, like our kind of people are doing, is that's is actually the title of my upcoming book, is You Are the Product. Right? Because what people buy ultimately is you and your energy. It's not like most people, again, aren't sitting there and comparing pros and cons and weighing all like the rational consumer mythology, right? It's like weighing all the things and piling up is like, okay, I'm going to go with this one. No, they're drawn to you and your brand, and that's why they buy. They're buying your energy. And I think ultimately that is what we're delivering to. The way I see it is like most businesses, like, yeah, there's a problem that we solve, and there's a practical thing that we do, but really the biggest value is in the energy that we're giving people, that we're sharing with people. And as they buy, that's the energy that they get to tap into. Steve Jobs talked about how products can have an energy or a spirit. He called it a spirit of enlightenment about them, that impact you in subtle ways that you might not be aware of. Yeah, that's another great example. Are you a Mac versus PC, right? Are you an Apple versus Samsung or a Microsoft or whatnot? Like it's pure like identity. But I think that people buy because of who you are, and they want to buy into that energy, and the product and service itself is kind of the excuse to have this relationship together.
Yeah, I'd say that's true just on a personal level as well, from a relational standpoint, whether or not you're
Mm-hmm.
actually selling something to somebody. You're
Yeah,
constantly selling yourself. I don't think most people recognize that or think about it that way. Actually, I'm
yeah,
sure most people don't think about it that way, but you're constantly selling yourself. You have to sell yourself to your friends. You have to sell yourself to your boss. You have to sell yourself to whatever. You're
mm-hmm.
constantly selling yourself, and what people are buying, they're buying you, they're buying your energy, they're buying what you're giving off. So
Yeah,
it doesn't,
yeah,
that doesn't only correlate to business. So I
right.
hope when people hear that, they hear also you as the person, as your brand, which is what we're in the brand world now, if you will. But
Mm-hmm.
as your brand, like that's what people are buying is your
Yeah,
brand, what you're giving off.
and another thing to like, because brand can sound, especially when it comes like personal brand, it can sound a little like, I don't know, like fancy or something, or disingenuous or something.
Yeah.
Another way to think of it is reach and reputation. Right? It's just,
Mm.
what is your reputation, and how many people know about know that reputation? Like, and that's like reputation being kind of how do people feel about you, which is essentially what brand is.
No, that's a good, because like you said, brand, most people wouldn't define themselves as a brand. And a brand still
Mhm,
does sound a little fake, maybe, I guess,
mhm,
because it's like, oh, your brand, like your brand. Well, no, my brand is just me.
mhm.
So reputation and reach, that's a good differentiator, better way to think about it.
Yeah.
So, what are some things that people can do, we'll say personally, to help improve their brand, to prove their reach and reputation, the energy that they give off?
Well, the number one thing is like really being themselves. And that sounds like duh, obvious, right? But most people are, and I've definitely fallen into this as well, is like you look at others and then you kind of copy that. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we like how did we learn to speak? How do we learn to walk, right? We copy what others were doing. Humans are wired that way. I don't think there's any shame to that, but there is a like the more that you dare just be truly who you are out there, the more compelling you're going to be, right? When you're trying to monitor and be a certain way, and like how do I sound right and all that stuff, like people can, like it becomes a filter, and now they can't feel your energy in the same way as strongly as when you're truly being yourself. And then some people are going to love it and some people are going to hate it, and that's fucking awesome. There's 8 billion people in the world. We don't need everybody to love us. But the reason why it's hard, or harder than it seems, is like going back to childhood, that between the ages of 1 and 2 is when we start to have this personality split, where like where before the age of 1, it's basically dopamine, 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 like right brain to right brain connection between mom and baby, right? It's like, oh, like awesome. Then we start to be mobile. We start to be able to crawl and walk and like burn our fingers on the stove or like whatever it is, get in trouble. And so our caregivers, our mom and dad, have to go and stop us, right? Stop, don't do that, you know, Jerry, right? And so neurochemically, we go from dopamine to noradrenaline, and like yay, adventure, dopamine, great. Like noradrenaline, like fuck, oh, what happened? And then if our parents are really good, they notice that, they pick us up, they hold us, they hug us, they get us back into dopamine. Hey, it's not you, it's just I need you to not do that because you're going to get in trouble. We don't understand these things, right? Like, but that's what we want to have happen. For most of us, that didn't happen. I think, especially for entrepreneurs, it didn't happen. So it creates that split where now there's good me. When I do this, I get love. When I do this, I get scolded. That's bad me. So we have that split. And it's not the behavior that becomes wrong. It's me. There's parts of me that are wrong, and there are parts of me that are good. And that's the journey of bringing back the like reintegrating the quote unquote bad parts. And I feel like a lot of the power is actually in that, those disowned parts of ourselves. When we're dare to just be whole and real with people and not feel like we have to hide certain things, that's a huge piece to daring to be ourselves, to truly be you out there. And what's fascinating too, by the way, is as you mentioned the divorce in relationship, we get attracted to people who have two factors in common. Number one is that they have parts of our disowned personality. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my first wife, I was so attracted to her. She was so social, I had many friends, and was so good at that stuff. That was part of my disowned personality because I was scared of people and I was in front of the computer all the time, right? So that has to be there. So we feel like, oh, with you, I'll be whole, right? Well, you won't, but you can definitely learn from that person. And so now the job is to reintegrate that disowned part of yourself so that you can be whole. Use them as inspiration. But you can't live vicariously through them. It's not going to be sustainable. But the other piece that has to be there in order for us to fall in love is that there has to be the piece where a part of her or him, the partner, is similar to the caregiver that caused us to split up. So that aspect that violated us, that made us feel wrong and bad, that has to be there too. So there has to be that element of attraction and danger at the same time. Otherwise, we don't fall in love. It was just pure, oh, I'm attracted to this person. It's like there's not that chemistry of falling in love. There has to be that danger there too. And so now we go and we like get married to this person. And now we're gonna be like, you're always like my mom. Like, why are you always like my dad? Well, because that, right?
Mhm.
That's why. That's why they have to be. And so we have to make peace with that, the violator aspect of that person, and take that home and realize that that was never like, that was me. I've now internalized that voice inside of me, and like, and that's why when my spouse does it, like, it really hurts, because it's hitting a wound, it's hitting an internalized voice. So I got to make peace with that part, and I got to make peace with the part of me that I've made bad or wrong, and then we become whole. And that's the journey of relating, is to do that together as a couple, as allies.
Hmm. That's good. A little pain and pleasure mixed together. I think
Yeah,
everything is a combination of pain and pleasure, to be totally
yeah,
honest. But
for sure. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good, brother. That's great. That's perfect. Tell me, we'll go ahead and finish up. I think we're coming right up on time. This was a great conversation, by the way. It didn't go at all the way that I expected it, but I think we got a lot of good wisdom nuggets thrown in there. Uh, what do you want to leave people with?
In terms of words of wisdom,
Hmm.
or
Let's start with
yeah,
that.
yeah, like, fall in love with you. Yeah. Get curious about who you genuinely are, not your wounding. Like, I think there's a tendency to fall in love with your suffering and your story. Oh, I'm this way because my parents did this. Like, oh, I've definitely been that down that path. But no, fall in love with the true you that you are. And fall in love with those parts of you that you don't want to be with, right? Your humanity, your the things that make you human. Fall in love with all the aspects of you, and then share that first and foremost, like, just with yourself, like, just be with all of who you are, and then share it with your partner, your loved one. Like, I like to do this, like, in my head, of like, just putting myself, all of me, including all the nasty dark shit, placing that inside the heart of my wife. So I'm fully including all of me, versus like, oh, she can have those pieces, but this I'm not, really willing to share. And then do the same with her. In your mind, take all of who she is and put her in your heart. Yeah. And then share that with the world, right? Like be willing to be all of who you are in your business, or in your, just in the world at large, because that's how you're able to give the gift of you to other people. And that, I believe, is why we're ultimately here.
Hmm. Give the gift of you to other people. That's good.
Yeah.
Where do people find you then?
Go to my Instagram. That's where I'm most active right now. I'm having fun with that. So at Calvin Correli, Correli, two R's, one L, and Correli. And just, yeah, follow me there. And then if you want to do me a huge favor, just let me know that you found me on the Good Wolf podcast. And even better, if there's a thing that I said that stood out to you, I'd love to hear that. That's it's To me, that is what makes the whole thing worth it.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Calvin?
And I do have a giveaway, actually. So I have
Oh,
a
yeah,
short
let's
video. Hmm?
go for it. Let us know.
Yeah, I recorded a video recently about, like, because I work with coaches and course creators and e-learning people, as you said. So having been in this business for 15 years now, I've kind of distilled down, one of my geniuses, like, condensing down to the essence of how to get a sustainable business, like get to 10,000 a month US consistently. Three core parts. So DM me 10K as the keyword on Instagram, and I'll send that video over.
Very good. I'll put the link to your Instagram definitely in the show notes so that people can get there quickly and easily. Calvin, thanks, brother. I appreciate the conversation. Good stuff today.
Thank you, Jerry. It's been a pleasure. I didn't know where this conversation was going to go either, but I love how it turned out. You're a good man.
Thanks, Calvin. Appreciate you, man.